Hi, guys. My name is Megan. Welcome to my pilot episode of my brand new podcast named Pruscop. We are talking to Cory, Kirby, and Glen, all three of which are very successful entrepreneurs that have gone through a very similar roller coaster, but in their own seats. I hope you enjoy the conversation just as much as I did. For those of you who don't know, I actually met Kirby. I met his daughter through a networking event, and then she reached out to me looking to purchase a home. I was more than happy to help her with that. And then I met Kirby at a showing, and we were talking about our goals and all of that. He asked me a lot of questions, which I liked. And you mentioned that he was starting a podcast. No way. I'm starting one too. Could you be on my podcast? I'm like, could you be on my podcast? So thank you so much for being a part of my pilot. I think that is incredible that I have such great people to talk to kick off this project of mine. So if you guys could go around starting with Kirby and explain what industries you've been in and where you're at now.
Nice to join you, Megan. I guess it starts off when I was a very young teenager. I went commercial fishing with my dad. Of all things, the first paycheck I ever had was cutting out cod tongue out of an Atlantic cod. I migrated all the way up to Alberta in 97 and I got into construction. I was a siding installer. So we go around and finish the outside of your houses. Two older brothers doing it as well. And why are we working for somebody else? Not that we didn't like them. They were phenomenal people. I'm still best friends with them, but it pushed me to want to try it on my own. 2005, I registered my first company and started siding. I had no clue what to expect. Nervousness would not be the right description for me. I can't really put a time limit on the years of learning because I'm still learning now, but I'm learning in a different mindset now. Like I thought I knew something when I started, and when I started making mistakes, it was devastating. It was devastating. And then I started realizing this is the pathway for most entrepreneurs. You can't know what you don't know, but you can't be naive enough to understand that you're going to get it right all the time. So yeah, it started off with my first siding company, and it just grew into other industries. I'm into real estate now. I'm into a welding company for the oil patch. I'm into Airbnbs. I'm into podcasts. I'm into tiny home space. We've got a real housing crisis going on in the world, let alone North America. So I think that's where my entrepreneurship has moved to, is accepting I need to learn to be able to get to the next level for business and working with people. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Like I met the three of you people, and it's just, it's very humbling, very humbling.
Could you flash us your background right now? Could you turn it off and on?
Okay. Okay. Stay on board the boat, Kurt.
This man is fishing right now while doing a podcast.
Pacific Ocean. I'm on the Pacific Ocean on the Sunshine Coast, north of Vancouver.
That just goes to show what you can do with your life. What about you, Cory? Where have you been and where are you going?
Thank you so much, Megan. So nice to be here today and hanging out with you and Glen and Kirby. I wish I was in the water. I think that'd be a lot of fun out there. We'll have to maybe next time plan one where we're all on the water doing that. That'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, you know what? Kirby went back to teenagers, so I may as well do something similar there too. I remember grade 7, I got my first job making pizza at Domino's Pizza. I remember taking my hat to school thinking, you know what? I'm just so excited to be an employee at such a young age and get into the money game a little bit and start to work and have fun. Growing up with two parents that worked so much, I felt I had to do that as well too. But what I was actually just hearing Kirby talk about and what it made me remember was in grade 9, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was always like some sort of option that you could take that was maybe entrepreneurship or empowerment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember our class or my group, we did like a hot dog sale with like donuts and all that stuff. And we made $300. I remember it was crazy. We made the most money out of everybody because everybody loves food, right? So it did really well there. And, you know, I look back and I was like, that was actually a really big thing. I stayed in the food industry through all of high school, got out of high school, got right into cooking, got my Red Seal in around 2012. And so Red Seal chef, I did that for a little over a decade. And I got to the point I made my own meal prep company. And at that point, I was heavy into fitness, working out all the time, and started feeding people. And that all started from, I took 2 friends and I said, hey, I'm going to give you guys meals for a week for free. all I ask is that you know, refer and start getting this out there. And the next thing, I'm making meals out of my apartment. And I started to build this massive business that turned into something extremely great. And to be honest, I ran into some personal struggles, and I made some decisions and choices that caused me to go down a growth journey. I guess you could say, get into some addiction and stuff like that. And it's funny, I was really thinking about this, but a lot of self worth and wanting to be liked by other people, I think that was a huge challenge I had back then. Because I always ask myself, I'm like, hey, what did that experience do for me, instead of, oh, that happened to me. I lost this, I lost that. I was a big victim back then, and it forcing me down a journey where I had to learn. Right. And fortunately enough, I met my wonderful wife through that process. And then I got my class one. I was driving back truck, doing that stuff. And you know what? I'm over 6 years sober now. So that feels really good. But in that time, it caused me to really start to get into personal development and reading. And that entrepreneur spirit was always inside of me. And then, you know what? Once I had our first little boy, I said, hey, it's go time. Let's get back out there. So now I'm in the financial industry. My wife and I are building a phenomenal business there, and getting into this podcast thing with Kirby and Glen. So super excited with that. Going to be on a boat one day like that. But you know what? In general, it's getting into a position now that's going to provide for my family for the rest of our life, and not have to listen to other people telling us when we can take time off, or how much money we're worth. Right.
That's
That's
a
a
big
huge
one.
thing there. Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
pass it
thank
back
you
to you.
for sharing that with me, or all of us actually, and anyone that's going to be listening. Being vulnerable about basically the shit you've been through. Everybody's been through something, but admitting that and saying, "Hey, it was really rough, but I picked it up by my bootstraps, and here I go. I'm not a victim anymore. Let's make it happen." That's was very impressive on its own. Glenn, it's your turn. Where have you been? Where are you going to be?
Hi, Megan. Presently, I'm located in Gatineau. I spent most of my life on the Lower North Shore, a small fishing community, very isolated. The only way in was by air or maritime, a different lifestyle altogether. Started off picking up work wherever you can while going to school. My family had a commercial salmon fishing license, so that's where it started. And my uncle owned a business. You do deliveries, you just pick up money wherever you can, basically. And after that, I became what I would consider an entrepreneur. Got into the entrepreneurial space in the sectors of retail, gas, hardware, all of those fun industries. Construction after that, went down the rabbit hole of business and how business works, and dealing with employees, dealing with people, while at the same time having to raise a family and trying to find your own way in life. And it's not as easy as what people make it out to be, because they don't see the struggles of building a business, actually. So they see the outcome, but not the struggle so much. Right there now, I've also worked for a Innu community. I saw a different side of the way politics works, so working for an Innu band council. Presently, I have my own commercial lobster license, and I'm doing some consulting work for an MRC in the political field, and I'm enjoying life.
That is wild. Fishing and the political field, construction, retail. You've been in many industries. I want to dive in the topic today, which is 9 to 5 versus grind to thrive, the transition. So you guys touched on a lot of things already. It's a roller coaster. It's a lot of behind the scenes work that nobody sees. They will not see the struggle and the hardship and the hours and the lack of sleep. Becoming an entrepreneur is a very difficult task. I don't know if everybody can do it successfully, but you guys have been. So I think you are incredible people to interview about this topic. So my first question for you guys was, what is the turning point that made you finally decide I am not an employee anymore? I'm starting my own business.
I think part of it was rich overnight. I really thought that it was that easy. So I had that mindset. Here is heck, I had to go out and try to liquidate things I didn't own, and thinking I needed some money to get started. So the turning point was I was quite happy with my income, but I had this urge, maybe it's better. Maybe it's better. And I think that would be the best way I could describe my turning point. Was I had the urge to try to see if things could be better. Now, the definition of better is very vague. Was it financial? Definitely. That was partly a financial goal, but being your own boss is pretty alluring to start out with that mindset of entrepreneurship. I would say being my own boss and trying to see if I could be financially rewarded with turning point. I like to swing it back on you. Megan, what was your turning point?
I've actually had quite a few side hustles. I didn't realize I was trying to be an entrepreneur, whether it was like art projects or I opened a cleaning company. I tried baking pies as well and selling it. So I was doing a bunch of little side projects and I never realized that I was being an entrepreneur when I was doing that. But I think my turning point was my last job that I had where I was an employee. I was being paid salary, which was fine, and I was getting a fair amount. But with salary, of course, there's no overtime. OT is your own time. And I added up all of my hours after every shift. And my first 3 months there, I was working well over 100 hours in overtime and I wasn't getting paid for it. And I know that I work very hard, but I realized as an employee, you can never get paid what you're worth. You just can't. That's not how it works. Businesses can't run if you're getting paid what you're worth. So I was like, if I know I can work this hard for someone else, why don't I finally work this hard for myself? I want to be the one to receive the benefits. It's all on me, good or bad. Being an entrepreneur, I get to own all of that. And then Corey, what was your turning point?
Oh, this is my mind's going in so many places on this, which is pretty cool. I look back at the two instances that have caused me to go into entrepreneurship. And the first one, get into meal prep. And that was more so just an idea that I just ran with. And all of a sudden it caught fire and I just kept going and I kept going. And then all of a sudden I was working on my own and I was by myself for a year and a half in that industry, teamed up with some business owners that I brought into the business as well during that time. I learned a lot about that experience, to be honest with you, from the type of business owners that you get in business with. And you know what, I think you're bound to grow through all those situations. And we definitely grew really fast in that business that over that year and a half. And then I look at this. So that was massive action, massive just going all in, and something caught fire and we just kept going. And to be honest, I think I got ahead of myself and you know what, I burnt out a lot and that pushed me down some dark times. But when I look at this recent turning point of what pushed me into entrepreneurship was wanting to be a present father, wanting to be there for my family, wanting to be there. It just wasn't worth the risk to me to not be in a position that allowed me to see my kids grow up for the rest of their life. And tomorrow's never guaranteed. So it's just a matter of giving everything we can to the people that we love the most and being present for them. To me, being an entrepreneur just gives me that opportunity to fight for the opportunity to be there for my family whenever they need me.
I think a lot of people can relate with that. And at the end of the day, everybody that's trying to be successful, we have the same common goal of, I want to help the people I love. And then, Glenn, what was your turning point to being self employed?
Basically, I would say I thought I saw places where I could make improvements in the way things were being serviced or delivered. Basically, saw mistakes or where I thought they were doing things wrong. And then I got into it. Like a lot of things, you realize you don't know as much as what you think, but then you've got to get yourself out of the situations that you put yourself into. Everybody's an entrepreneur at some level because every family's got to deal with revenue and expense. And a business at the end of the day boils down to revenue and expense. But it's all the other unknowns and unforeseens that you have to deal with, whether it's change in government regulations or employees being sick or stuff happening out of your control, basically. And you have to adapt. And I think that's the real definition of an entrepreneur, is the ability to adapt when changes come that you are not expecting or been unforeseen.
Kirby was basically, summary was saying that he just thought that the grass could be greener and he was ready to take that risk. Corey, you had a startup business already, and then you're like, hey, why don't I push myself to do something like this full time so I can be present for my family? And then Glenn thought he could do better than the boss could. And he gave it a shot and realized that it's a bit harder than it looks at the first glance.
At first glance, yeah.
This is a good question that I really like as well. Was there a moment where you were really doubting yourself? You quit your job, left your job, and then you started your new business. And then a couple months, couple years, and you were like, oh my God, why did I do this? I could just get a 9-to-5 job again and go back to stability. Did you ever have those moments? starting with Kirby?
110%. It starts with when your eyes wake up in the morning, whether you're an employee or entrepreneur. You wake up in the morning, and some days your energy level is through the roof, and you can't wait. You can't wait to get started. Why is the sun not up yet? And you wake up some days and you're like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed till lunchtime. So 100%, 100%. There's the challenges that you run into as an entrepreneur. It's not for the faint of heart some days. We can read all the books we want, but I truly believe in that you manifest our futures, and entrepreneurship is one of the tipping stones in getting there.
So what do you do? Because everybody has these moments. What do you do in those moments? What keeps you going?
The beauty with my journey is it's switched to, like Cory, family. It's for my family. It's for me, for my family. Selfishness, I believe, is not a bad thing in entrepreneurship now. I wouldn't have become a better entrepreneur. I still got a long ways to go. I think I still got a very long ways to go, but I'm okay with having some selfishness now in me because I know it makes me a better boss. It makes me a better employee. It's just all around a healthy thing. Sometimes these descriptions can be very offensive, but at the end of the day, I've learned to accept you need a little bit of everything. If you're going to play baseball, hockey, volleyball, ringette, are you a competitor or are you just having fun and exercising? And there's nothing wrong with either. Some people don't want to be bosses, and that's quite fine. Some people don't want to be anything but a broom sweeper. That's totally fine. Some people want to be brain surgeons. Totally fine. We find our path in life. My journey, I'm going to turn my video off to see if that helps maybe. But yeah, my journey now is completely different than when I started. Like you asked me the question of a turning point, and as I progressed, it morphed into something way different than I imagined. And it's just been a blessing. How did I go from what I originally set out to do to become what I am now? It's simple. I see the joy that people bring to my life. So why can't I help repay the favor and bring more joy to more people's lives? I'm not going to try to trigger you, but it's who I am as an entrepreneur. I want to get to the next level faster than I did. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, you've been doing it already. Yep.
So I met you through a business deal with my daughter.
hmm
When I gave her some minimum criteria, she questioned it. So my response to her questioning was not a problem. Why don't you just go rent from a blind stranger and your equity will not go anywhere? Your rent, you get no equity. Entrepreneurship, you might have to work 200 hours a week, 180 hours a week, or 90 hours a week. But at the end of the day, it is your equity that you're pushing. And I think that's a turning point in most people's careers, right? That ultimately you can be out fishing in BC and be on a podcast. I didn't plan it. It's very disruptive, probably to say the least. But at the end of the day, I think you should have started 2 weeks ago, Megan. I am so happy to be tagging along your journey.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited for the people that I'm meeting and the conversations that I'm having. I have a very blessed life for sure. I do want to ask Cory that same question. Have you thought of ever just dipping back into a 9 to 5 job and not wanting to run your own business anymore? Do you ever go through those mood swings?
Oh, you know what? I think entrepreneurship takes a certain level of being all in that you can't give yourself an out. Whether we've read the book or heard of the quote from Think and Grow Rich, burn your boats. That's got to be your mentality. If you're going to win, you got to sink everything around you and go for it. And, in all honesty, my last position before getting into what I'm doing now, I was working for family. And I'll tell you, it wasn't easy to give in that notice. And I'll be honest with you, I took a coward's way out and I gave it to not even my family member. I gave it to someone that I work with that was my manager. And I look back at that and I say, hey, you know what? Why did that happen? Why did I do that? But who cares? You know what? Life goes on. But I look back and I was like, hey, I'll share this one thing. My wife and I have been talking about this a lot. And honestly, these last few months, we had a very big conversation that changed a lot of this. First things first, job stability is never guaranteed, right? That's never, if you have a great paying job, it's good until it's gone, right? That's the reality of that. Just like entrepreneurship, everything's good. You take your foot off the gas, it could be gone. right? The biggest thing is support in the home. You got to have support, right? If you're all in on yourself, you're building on your own, cool. But if you're in a relationship, you got to have that support. I know my wife and I catching a fish in the middle of the call. Hilarious. I know my wife hit me with a master question a couple months ago. She says, Cory, you know what? I feel like I'm more all into this than you are building this business. Right. And I remember looking at her and I was like, man, why did she have that thoughts? Because there was thoughts going through my brain that are like, do I need to go get a job? Do I need to go figure out a way to guarantee income coming into our home right now? Or do I just need to work harder in this certain area? And it was her saying that taught me immediately that she is just as all in as I actually am. And I can forget those doubts and thoughts that I'm having about needing to make income and just go all in on what I'm doing. And that's going to create that opportunity. You know what? I feel like if you have those thoughts of getting back into it, it's going to pull you away from the path that you're going down on entrepreneurship. So the best thing you can do is just tell those thoughts no and move on and go through it, whatever it takes. If you have a vision and you have a dream, like what Glenn said, if you think you can do it better, go do it better. Go put the work in and get better yourself, and you'll get there.
And yeah, very interesting, because the way I look at it is, so what's the risk? You're learning new skills, and the way I thought about it and the way I still think about it is that you're learning new skills. You're learning how the system works. You're putting more cards into your wallet. You're putting more stuff into your resume. So what do you have to lose, really? Because if you had to go back out into the 9 to 5 world again, you're still up in your offer to whatever boss or whatever industry you choose to go into through experience and through taking that leap. And my history was I sold off companies or assets of companies, and I went back to work for this Innu Nation. And what I realized once again through that 5-year, 7-year span was the same thing that got me into entrepreneurship in the first place. Was thinking that I could change and do things better. And so now I'm back into it as a consultant and at the same time into the fishery, but you're always looking, questioning, and I think being curious is something that's built into entrepreneurs, looking for answers and being curious and asking why. And then you'll go down the rabbit holes whether you want to or not, I think.
So you were an employee, then you were self-employed, and then you went back to being an employee, and now you're self-employed again. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why did you go from self-employed to employed?
Well, there was changes in my life. We were living in a small community, and my sons left. My second one was in university, and our family situation changed. We decided to make a change and move to the city. And like I said, there was an opportunity to sell off the company that I was involved in. So that allowed us the flexibility. And I tried to go back to the 9 to 5, and I did it for a while. But the 9 to 5 position that I had allowed me quite a bit of flexibility. It was new. Like I said, it was working with the Innu community. And I was also involved in politics prior to that. It was a learning curve back in the 9 to 5. But there was always the itch that had to be scratched to get back into the game.
I think that's actually a perfect transition to the next topic that I've been looking forward to discussing, which is what traits do you see in successful entrepreneurs that you don't see in ones that don't make it? So you touched on always being curious. That's a really good one. Or always having an itch to do more. What have you noticed as well, Kirby?
Wow. Wow. That's deep. That's deep. For me personally, I can't speak for everybody else. For me, success for me is making the right decisions. If you base it on money, if you base it on greed, if you base it on lack of humility, I don't become very successful. Can I say some of my friends, some of my competitors have been less successful because of those characteristics? No, I can't say that. But I only know what works for me. That's my journey from the first day I opened my company, is realizing that being humble, I couldn't have anything, Megan, if I didn't have people working with me. I'm not a owner operator per se, and I need partnership with my employees to get where I'm going. I love using the word selfishness.
Mhm.
I believe I've become way more selfish about what I need to be a good entrepreneur, and that's treating people, which is my competitors, my employees, my partner, which I'll consider the same. I consider my competitors my partners. I think that's the best way I can describe it. Is not what they're doing, is what am I doing?
What about stress? Was there a lot of stressful times, and how did you handle that?
I I believe stress is a relative term, like sadness, like selfishness. If we want to dwell on a horrible moment in our careers as an entrepreneur, it can consume you. But if you want to deal with stress on a level of acceptance, then stress doesn't really stick around too long. What is an horrible situation in a business? Losing money, losing a worker, losing a job.
Yeah, the inability to take a decision when the decision has to be taken.
A good friend of mine taught me, make a decision with conviction.
Then you're not wrong.
So, Glenn, would you say that the trait that you notice in successful people is being able to use stress properly or not letting it linger?
Success, part of it is determination too, because there's bumps in every business person's journey, and then maybe sometimes it's business related, sometimes it's not business related. Maybe sometimes you're spending too much time at the business and you don't spend time with your family, and you ignore the other side of living, and you put all of your energy into one place, and you lose sight of what's important, or you lose sight of the overall goal. So it's staying on your path and not allowing yourself to be taken off the path, but you have to zoom out a lot of times. If you're only looking at the things through a lens and through a tunnel vision, you could be missing a lot of the more important things, and ending up stressing everybody else around you, which is something that you're supposed to be looking out for anyway, and you're responsible for yourself and the people around you, right? Your business is part of your family. You've got to be conscious of as many aspects as possible. But I think if you lose focus, that's where people end up getting in trouble. And the world doesn't stop, because if you've got focused in on this one item, this one area, the rest of the world keeps moving.
I love that you use the phrase zoom out. I use that all the time, helping people purchase properties or making decisions. And they're just so narrowed in on this one little thing that it seems this big because they're so zoomed in on it. But I try to help people zoom out and then actually look at the whole picture so that they can just take a breath and realize what the situation is. I think a lot of anxiety for people comes from zooming in and not even knowing that you can zoom out. Cory, what have you noticed for successful people?
Consistency and discipline. If we're just going to put those two things out there really quick. Being a quality person, someone that actually operates from their heart, that's going to go a long way. The mind can do a lot of things to somebody. Ego, greed, money. A lot of people lose everything because of money. And it's what are you getting in business for? What's the main reason? What's the thing that drives you to get up every day? Financial abundance is going to come to you no matter what you do. Like it's a part of it. That's a part of your results, right? If you're successful in what you're doing, you're going to get compensated for it. Whatever that compensation is, that'll work itself out. That's to be decided at another time. When you're working towards a goal, sure, there's financial goals in there. But when it really comes down to it, if people get too far in their head, they start pre-planning things like they've already happened.
What's the difference between what you just described, pre-planning things before they happen, and manifesting?
Oh, good question. So manifesting, there's this one saying that I love, start with the end in mind. Okay. Now this thing can be used in many different ways. Say you're having a conflict conversation and you want both parties to win in this situation, right? Because the world's very, I have to be right. That's what it's like out there oftentimes. But, begin with the end in mind, right? When you have that vision and you actually say it, you actually have the vision, you're telling yourself what kind of life you want to have in the future, what your world really looks like. I feel like manifesting is you're just connecting with a deep part of you that is truly finding what you actually want. And I think every time you're manifesting, meditating, or diving into that, you're diving deeper into your subconscious mind, because everything is infinite at the end of the day. What we think we know and what we want today could be, we're so far away from what we're potentially incapable of doing. In all reality, what we see today as possible, there's so much more to it, right? All you're doing is bringing yourself closer to your goals, and these things are manifesting to, guess what? Be able to manifest more, manifest bigger.
You're saying manifesting is the big picture and why. Don't focus on the how.
We already have everything, believe it or not. It's just a matter of,
Oh, we're getting deep.
yeah, we already have it all, right? It's people get too tied up on when am I going to have this? When is this going to happen? when am I going to make all this money for all these hours I'm working? That's irrelevant. When
Mhm.
your desire is big, your consistency is there, and you're just showing up every day and continuously going, everything you could ever want is going to show up.
I wanted to jump on this question here of traits you see in successful people. I was laying in bed trying to fall asleep. I couldn't. I was thinking about this and then I had to text it to myself at 2 in the morning so I didn't forget. And I think for me, what I've noticed for my version of success is people that have made it in my eyes, none of them are victims. None of them have a victim mentality. Even if you have a high net worth, but you are blaming your family or your business partner or the market crash, or if you are blaming external sources for your situation, you are not going to make it in the long run. In the short term, you might be able to make a good money, but in the long run, you're not going to last. And for me, success is sustainability. And I don't think it's sustainable to be a victim. And everybody that I look up to as a business owner or just a human being in general, all of them just admit that stuff is hard, but they know it's temporary and life is going to get so much better. They just got to keep going and make the best of what they have.
It starts and ends with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited to talk about this.
Well, then
Yeah, we,
go.
we can spin off of that. Where do you thinking, Corey?
It's victim mindset, right? So there's 3 R's that are tied to that: resistant, resentment, and revenge, right? So if someone says something, something happens, any of these and any of those 3 R's happen, you resent the person, you have resistance, or you want revenge, instantly your mind is in a victim mindset. It instantly happens. If someone says something to you and you take offense to it, right? And you're like, oh, can't believe they would say that. You're being a victim right there. And how many times a day do you think we're all victims? In all reality, right? It's very easy to fall into that mindset so fast, right? And the biggest thing is understanding those 3 R's that I just said is if you recognize yourself resenting somebody, resisting somebody, or wanting revenge on a situation, or you're getting offensive, the thing you got to look at is yourself, because the only person casting that judgment is yourself. And that judgment's coming from within you. And you just really got to check your own values, your own emotions in that moment.
I try to ask this of everybody that I meet. If you could go back in time and hold your younger self's hand and give them a piece of advice that could have really helped you out had you have known, what would you go back in time and be like, hi, little me, I'm going to tell you this because it would have helped me out. So I'm helping you out now. You can be business, personal.
The grass is greener where you water it.
Yeah.
That's exactly, honestly. I went through a lot of kitchens growing up. I went through, maybe I don't want to say the names too much, but multiple different ones in Edmonton, Alberta here. And if I would have stayed at one, I would have got to head chef. I would have done all of that. And I would have learned something different that I didn't learn. I learned a lot. Don't get me wrong. I learned a lot jumping around, going through the different hierarchies, going through the different companies. But I missed the opportunity to be a head chef at one of those locations. And I look back and I'm like, man, like why the grass was greener where I watered it. I was always looking at the other side. And that was a huge learning when I look back in my life. I would never take back anything that I have because I have everything I have because of my life and the way it went. But that would be one thing I would say is see it through. Don't get to the end or what you think is the end and then have the conversation. Don't be trying to make it better or easier because it's not going to be worth it in the end.
They're following what Corey says, that question it and pound sand until you get the answer that you were looking for, and then you can move on. Keep questioning, keep pounding it, then you can move on. But if you let life get in the way and you went this direction because this is where you thought you should be and not necessarily where you want it to be, and you didn't finish what you started, and you didn't go down the rabbit hole, because there's rabbit holes every day if you want to. And if you don't go down that rabbit hole, then you're leaving something behind that you may have to return to. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but question everything and ask why. And when you get that answer, ask another why until you get to the bottom of it, and then you can move on.
What was an opportunity that you had that you regret not staying a little bit longer and not asking as many questions?
Like my conscience and looking back, the questions that I had and the routes that I could have taken would have gotten me where I am today faster.
Mm,
If that makes any sense.
yeah.
Because I ended up going back to that place and going deep and questioning. The questions were always there, but I didn't act on it necessarily. And it lingered in my conscience, and it came up later. And then luckily I had another opportunity, and then I took it. So I wasted time, but I didn't waste time because I learned other things in the process. But it's being that goal oriented and taking the risk, because the risk seems bigger than what it is actually. And that's how we scare ourselves into not moving. We paralyze ourselves with fear.
Yeah, questions are a beautiful thing, and that's why I ask so many of them, is because I just see it as you can't cut corners necessarily in learning, but you can definitely accelerate the process. And why would I try to figure out everything on my own to protect my ego when I could just ask somebody that's in that field or who has been in that situation before and learn from them? And it makes them happy as well to see that the crap they went through is helping out the next person in line. We gotta ask Kirby that question as well. Kirby, the question is, if you could go back in time and hold your hand and give yourself a piece of advice, either personal or professional.
I didn't know what winning was to me. I thought I knew, but the journey of entrepreneurship has taken me to a whole new understanding of what winning means to me. I rewind and tell my previous self that winning to me are completely the opposite of what I set out in my mindset. I would have accelerated my journey. That's about the simplest way I could describe it.
That's great because as you grow, your priorities change and the people that you meet and the situations that you get, you really understand that, hey, if I had come across this earlier, I would have done something completely different. But now that I'm able to look at it this way, I'm able to help other people with this information. Corey, what does retirement mean to you?
Oh, retirement to me?
Yeah.
Thank you for asking me that one. It's never, whatever you do, you never feel like you work a day in your life.
Mm.
Yeah. I feel it's whether, yeah, I feel retired, to be honest. Like, I feel like what I'm doing right now is what I'll do for the rest of my life. When I have grandkids, when I have, that'll be pouring into people, helping people in many different ways. It might serve the country or the world in different platforms or different lines of work. But in my honest opinion, when you love what you do, you're retired. When you have to wake up and get told where you got to be, what time, and how that works, yeah, you're always behind the game there.
I think anybody's incredibly fortunate if they are able to truly believe that what they are doing is something that they would pursue with or without the monetary gain. And yeah, that's a really beautiful place to be. And it's unfortunate that not enough people can reach that. They're just focused on paying their bills.
That's a
Oh,
dangerous way to say that.
yeah, it's living
People
life in
can't.
scarcity.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing, right? So
So
many
yeah.
people can. It's just, you know what, the biggest thing I'd say is people just don't have the right associations in their life that are helping them get that going.
Mhm.
And it just takes one time to say, hey, could life be different? Could I be an entrepreneur? Because
And then
let's
you have to act on
go.
it. One of my favorite sayings that I heard from a book was something along the lines of most ideas are born stillborn. And that just, and it's so true. All of us have incredible ideas every single day. I'd bet on it. But we're to just think, oh, that'd be cool. And then it just flies away and we never think of it again. So, yeah, having that idea and then actually acting on it is what's going to set you apart from the rest.
Absolutely.
So, you guys are starting your podcast. We see your beautiful generated background there, M2C. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Ultimately, it's the world has so many different perspectives out there. It just is. And you could have this interview with millions of entrepreneurs and you're going to get different answers, different things they would have went back and told themselves. But the world has topics. The world has all of these things that we can always talk about. And, you know, getting like-minded individuals together, entrepreneurs, people that are business-minded, people that want to get out there and maybe they have ideas for new businesses, they're looking for money to do it, or anything like that. Those are the type of people we want to talk to. People that are thinking of ways to change this world to make it a better place? I'll maybe let Kirby and Glen get into that as well too.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily want perspectives from Harvard or that level. We want the boots on the ground answers, people with experience and are living the struggle and how they see things moving forward. Because a lot of answers, I think, come from boots on the ground, and the people that are actually doing the grind see things differently than people that go through an educational or a theoretic process.
What platforms are your podcasts going to be on?
Ultimately, all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, iCloud, all that stuff is it'll be everywhere. So
And when is your first episode going to come out?
let's go. Kirby loves that you just said that. We don't have that date yet. I should have came into this meeting with that date on paper. But do
Okay,
you want
so
to be the first guest on our show?
that would be so awesome if I could. What a blessing that would be.
Let's do that, Kate. We'll pick a date and it'll be this month. That's my commitment to you.
Yeah, let's wrap up 2024 with both of our first podcast episodes and kick it even to high gear for the next year here. All right, I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I was telling Cory and Kirby this is my first episode, so I could make it a little bit better, but the main thing is I just got to get it started because I've been talking about it for weeks. So thank you for helping me actually establish a date and being a part of this for me to pull the trigger. Your whole goal is to help entrepreneurs get started and get moving, and that's exactly what you guys did with me. So thank you very much. You've already started doing that, and I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, enjoy the water. Bye, guys.
Bye.